there's a race for QB3 for the 2025 NFL draft, whether it's Jackson Dart or Will Howard or Jalen Milroe, but Louisville's Tyler Shough's name should be invoked in that conversation. We're going to talk about what the film showed us, that and more, coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an offensive draft analyst over at Bleacher Report, and that's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He is the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. Guys, thank you as always for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Sorry for being our every dayers, man. We're getting into that scouting notebook a little bit. We're going to scout some of these guys and talk to you about their status right now in the 2025 NFL draft. Tyler Shough, is he on the rise? Quarterback out of Louisville. Elic Ayomanor had a really good testing session at the NFL Scouting Combine. Did he lock himself in as a top 10 wide receiver? And Andrew Mukuba, a day 2 pick for the 2025 NFL draft. We're going to talk about that. Let's get into the Tyler Shough conversation. Keith, 6'5", with 200 pounds, 205, whatever, over 200 pounds, out of Louisville, guy who I believe started his career out at, I believe it was Oregon. I think he transferred to Texas Tech, then got hurt, or he transferred to Louisville and everything like that. And I think we talked about him before the combine. We were like, man, we liked him. We didn't get a chance to get into like his actual game. He came into the combine. I'm sorry, I say Senior Bowl. Came into the combine at 6'5", almost 220 pounds, 9 3/4 on the hand. He ran a 4.63 with a 1.61 10-yard split, so he showcased his speed in open field. Keith, I'm gonna say this: his tape to me, my initial grade before I got into the injury history, which I'll get into. We talk about kind of the negatives about his profile. I felt like his tape was better than Jackson Dart's, to be completely honest. Like I was sitting there watching it, and the things that I dinged and knocked Jackson Dart on, and I can hear the Locked On people, the Locked On family saying DP is 26 years old. He's almost 32. I hear you. I hear you, you ages out there. I know y'all gonna sit here and hate on my man because he's a little bit older. This is not Brandon Wheaton, but I did watch him, and I felt like this guy processed information quicker. He was more accurate, especially into tight window situations, not all the quick hitches and off coverage and things like that. He gets from one to 3 in the progression. He anticipates throwing lanes and throws in general, and he has a live arm to throw the ball down the field or in the middle of the field, some of those 10 to 12-yard in cuts. Get between zones. You got two linebackers sitting there. Can you fire that in there? He showcased that ability as well, and he's a dual threat type of quarterback, and similar to the way that people praise Jackson Dart to be, that mobile, tough, physical runner. Before the injuries, I ended up having a nearly identical grade, maybe a little bit higher for Tyler Shough initially. His tape to me translates better to the league than Jackson Dart.
Yeah, I mean that's a hell of a statement, right? But I'll go this route, DP, and say that I 100% agree with you. Overall, I think this quarterback class is better than what people give it credit for. And partly because of guys like Tyler Shough. I think that's his name, Shough.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get that right, DP, from an enunciation perspective. But you're talking about 6'5", 220. Has played a lot of football in his career, has a live arm. You know what won it over for me was his ability to process in chaos. You want to know who Tyler is? Cut on the Clemson game when they played Clemson, and then cut on the Notre Dame game. And you'll see him make really good throws, right, with the football. I thought just an impressive guy. And the mobility that you've seen in Indy was just a verification of what you've seen on film. To run a 4.6 as a quarterback, that's impressive. And I think it was a 4.63. So I want you to understand something. He was a couple hundredths of a second off of running a 4.5. So you're talking about a quarterback running a 4.5. And then, like, for a quarterback perspective, that's elite, right? Like
6'5", 220.
Yeah, 6'5", 220. So I know his combine performance, people were saying that, and I didn't see all of it. of the conversation, but people were saying that he was kind of doing too much or trying different things that kind of messed with
I
his
watched the entire thing. I know what they're talking about. It was he
different
simulated
arm
like
angles and
pressure coming, and he slid into the pocket. He was trying to stand out. He's trying to do some stuff to stand out amongst the pack. And Kurt Warner was like, "Hey," he said during the broadcast, just if you're going to do that, complete the pass. The one time he did that, he didn't complete it, but he was like, I think he talked to after they finished working out. You saw Kurt Warner on the broadcast, talking with him one-on-one. So he did some stuff that he's not a flashy guy, but you could tell he's got personality. And I think flashed over into his workout a little bit.
I think he was trying to win, right? He was trying to win the combine at the end of the day. But to the age situation, I don't care about that with quarterbacks. Not at all, right? And simply because they play longer anyway. It's not like it's a corner where they're cutting at high speed. It's not like it's a running back where they have amount of carries. They're going to continue to take a pounding in the NFL. For quarterbacks, they're pretty much protected, right? Like, and these are guys that are going to play well into their, if you have a good one, he's going to play till he's 35 anyway. So you give me a quarterback and tell me I have 8 good years as a he's a franchise, play caller and leader and things like that, then you take that, right? You don't pass up on him if you feel really, if you have a high conviction about who he could be as a quarterback, you don't pass up on that part of it. And I like experienced quarterbacks. I want quarterbacks that have played a lot of football. And so I look at Tyler and I say, there's a lot of things to like about him. And I think that so I kind of pushed the needle, DP, to say this, that not only just the Jackson Dart conversation, but where does he fall amongst, hey, I'm going to take a swing on this guy potentially in the first round, right? I think this draft will be interesting, much like the 2022 draft with Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett, is that will the NFL stay disciplined, or will there be a lot of quarterbacks flying off of the board, right, and say, hey, NFL team saying, hey, we need a quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the big test for the NFL, and we kind of see with like teams like the Giants saying, "Listen, word is that they want to pair they want to get Aaron Rodgers and then still get a young quarterback to kind of, in a sense, Atlanta Falcons themselves with having the Kirk Cousins and the Michael Penix Jr. and maybe the Falcons, even though we not us, I don't think we ripped that pick last year, but it was more so like, well, you just paid this man a lot of money. Like, why did you take a quarterback at 8? It kind of worked out for him because Kirk Cousins fell off a cliff with his play, and then Michael Penix had to come in, and you saw what he was able to do. I think for Tyler Shough to be able to even sniff first round, I think it's going to be the injury history. So, just to kind of go through it, he had a broken collarbone, with clavicle in 2021, and then he re-broke it, I believe, in 2022. Missed six games in 2022. 2023 was kind of a freak situation. It was one of those hip drop tackles that the NFL is trying to get rid of, or they're essentially getting rid of in the NFL. And he got a defender hip drop tackled him. I think his foot or his leg got caught underneath in the grass, in the turf, and he broke his fibula in 2023. So the injury kind of history, I think the more concerning thing for teams will probably be the collarbones, because if you broke it and rebroke the same thing, the collarbone clavicle, it's okay, if you get hit blindside in the pocket, is this potentially the rear's ugly head again? Are we to worry about this happening? I think that's what's going to keep them more so out of round 1. I don't think it's for some teams, yes. A lot of people casual, the draft community don't like older prospects. No matter if it's quarterback, running back, O-line, it was they don't like it, right? But teams, it's kind of split. You have some teams who really like and more so prefer young guys because of the ceiling and how they can get you to a uncharted territory rather than coming in like a Baker Mayfield. Some teams are you probably already capped at your ceiling. So it just depends on the team. I think he's going to be a second round pick, because at the end of the day, the tape is good. The art, the tools and the abilities, the same thing we talk about with Jackson Dart. He has that, but he also plays, in my opinion, more mature NFL caliber offensive football. And I think you talking about dropping him at Keith, it's like dropping somebody on a deserted island, and who's going to be able to fend for themselves. That's what you're doing when you're taking these quarterbacks out of these gimmicky offenses in college and dropping them into an NFL offense. Who's going to be able to sink or swim? I'm going to bet my money that Tyler Shough can swim, and not just swim. He's going to be able to he's going to be able to swim, find land, and help get you the land. That's the type of guy I think he can be for a team. I think he has everything to be a long-term starter as long as he stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree, DP. And I'll say this. I think he's a guy that consensus-wise, the NFL may be higher on him, right, than what they're talking about in the media, just when you look at the height, weight, athleticism, plus his production this past year. But, DP, let's talk about a playmaker, man. We're talking about wide receiver from Stanford, Elic Ayomanor, right? Surprised a lot of people with his 40 time. We're going to talk about, did he earn himself a slot as a top 10 wide receiver? We're going to have that conversation coming up next.
You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet health care, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets as well. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. Guys, you don't want to miss out on a deal like this. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 off your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the descriptions. Save $20 off your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Stanford star wide receiver Elic Ayomanor, Keith, like you said, came into the NFL scouting combine last weekend, and he had himself a good showing. Right, he came in at 6'2", 206 pounds. Probably dropped a little bit of weight. He's probably plays close to 210, 212, 32 3/8 on the arm, 10-inch hands. He's got big, strong hands. But this is where he was the most impressive. The actual athletic testing. He ran a 4.44 in the 40-yard dash. He had a 1.58 10-yard split. So like that that early explosiveness is where exactly where you would want it to be, but the long speed clearly is with him being able to hit 4.4 and hit it as quickly after the 10-yard split. He jumped 38.5 inch on the vertical, and he had a 10.7 broad. So he had the explosiveness in the leaps, but the long speed in the 40. And this is a guy that we all know, good route runner, physical, strong. He can separate. Can work from he can play the X, the Z, the slot. He does not mind being that kind of dirty work type of receiver where it's 3rd and 10 and you tell him to run that end cut, and he doesn't mind running it. He knows he might take some punishment. He knows he might get hit by that safety creeping down and triggering downhill. He doesn't care. He's going to make those tough grabs. Then you're talking about in the red zone, the leaping ability, the ball skills, the hand strength, 10-inch hands. He can go up there and make plays at the catch point. This is a guy, for me, he was already a top 10 wide receiver. The question is now, is he top 5 for most folks? He's a top 5 receiver. I think he's my 5th highest graded receiver behind like Golden, Tet, Luther Burden, and Emeka. He's my wide receiver 5 right now. Him checking that box, like Keith, we talked about it. The combine is not something that overtakes film. Don't ever do that. It's a data point in this process. And you got to check boxes. He didn't. Was he supposed to be at the Senior Bowl? He was. He was supposed to be at the Senior Bowl. He didn't come to the Senior Bowl. I'm assuming he was more focused on testing and getting ready for the combine. When he came to the combine, he checked the boxes he needed to check. I think this guy's going to be a high 2nd round pick.
Yeah, I know. I definitely see that. So I got to go back to the film guy, DP, because there is nothing on tape for me that thought this guy was going to test how he tested, right? I actually had tons of question marks about his ability to separate vertically and how explosive he was, like, in the deeper portions of the field. Can he be a vertical field stretcher, things like that? I just didn't see him separate vertically a lot. So he's a guy that, watching his testing time, to be completely honest, I'm not a betting guy, but if I had to bet, I was going to bet the 4.55, right? I was going to bet something around there close to I would have bet that he ran a 4.6 more than he would have ran a 4.4. That's just kind of where I was. And so with that being said, I have to go back to the film and see how it applies, right? That speed, and if it's there, if he's just not utilizing it, right? Or like I just have to see what's going on, DP. Because this one, you're talking about testing. This may have been top 3 most surprising, I think, as far as me expecting one thing and not getting another, right? I think this was one of the more surprising situations for me. But obviously, like you said, think he's very talented. Because I had him in that bucket. And I think you mentioned this too, like the Dontavian Wicks bucket, right? But when you run a 4.4, I don't think Dontavian Wicks ran a 4. I think he was more of a mid 4.5 to 4.6 guy. When you run a 4.4, you put and especially at that size with that power, you put yourself in a conversation of teams considering if you're an X wide receiver or not, which is really great for you, right? Especially in this draft that's lacking X wide receivers. But the question is, like I said, just applied in football. I wish he would have came to the Senior Bowl just to see how he can move and things like that. So definitely one of the more surprising situations for me. And I think I had him outside of the top 10, but I want to jump back into the film to see, right? Because I mean, as of now, you look at some of the wide receivers, obviously T-Mac, Travis Hunter, Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen Royals, right? Savion Williams, Xavier Restrepo, Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins. There's a lot of guys, Pat Bryant, kind of just in that mesh, Jack Besh, to kind of see where he stands as far as being a top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, I think, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm going back to the film. Essentially that's what the combine is for, right? It's either if a guy comes in and runs as fast as you thought, you're like, well, I don't have to watch his film again. He did exactly what I thought he was going to do, right? Like if Isaiah Bond ran the 4.39 or 4.3, if Isaiah Bond ran the 4.21, I wouldn't have gone back and checked the film because I know he's a burner. He has like electric speed and everything like that. He can beat angles. He can outrun guys. It's when you do something that I didn't foresee. You know what I mean? That's when I'm like, okay, I got to go back and check the tape. You know what I mean? And like, I think even with him, I'm going back to check tape because I was kind of weary. I was like, all right. And I think the playing weight probably is going to be a big thing too. It's like, okay, did you play closer to 215, 218 at 6'2"? And it's like, if so, that might be why you didn't look as dynamic, explosive and stuff like that on tape. And it's like, but if you play, so then that's when it becomes a question of, and I tweeted this out during the comp, like I think as measurements were coming in, as weights were coming in and different things like that, people were starting to freak out. Mason Graham was 296. I'm like, guys, I guarantee you, he does not play at 296. Like you can look at his body type and tell he's not 296 when you watch him on tape. Like he's clearly over 300 pounds. So it's like he probably dropped weight thinking I'm gonna run, had the heel situation, he couldn't run. Like that's just what it is. So it's like, okay, well, where with these guys testing for the guys who do test better than you expect, like even like a Quinshawn hitting 4.48, Quinshawn was 220. You go back to I forgot I went back to his Ole Miss stuff. He was like 205, 210 at Ole Miss. So I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense of why you look so different at Ohio State compared to Ole Miss. So I think for him it's like, okay, Elic, where do you feel comfortable from a strength standpoint? Do you feel like you still? Because I mean, when I watched him work out, I was like, he's only 206 right now. I was like,
no, he definitely looks 220, right? Like on film, like he looks a lot more than just 205 pounds.
Like I was watching him work out and stuff, and I'm like, y'all sure he 206? Like he looks a good 212 right now. Like he looks ready to go. And so it's like wherever, if I'm the coach, I kind of want him to, if I can keep you close to the 206 and we get that 4.4 out of you every game, I'm good with that. You got to figure out where are you most comfortable playing at from a playing weight, like because you don't want to strip that strength away from him to where he's like not as physical and be able to dominate the catch point or fight through tackles and stuff like that because he's really good fighting through contact. So it's like where does he play is going to probably more so dictate the speed scale of where he's going to land. Truthfully, once we get to like was it OTAs or mini camp, rookie mini camp, training camp, all that stuff late in the summer, when they weigh you, then what's going to be your weight, and then also how fast are you going to be at that time?
Yep, I agree 100%. DP, let's talk a defensive back, Mr. Andrew Mukuba, Mr. Texas, the safety, do-it-all, corner, nickel, safety. He does it all. Let's talk about him as a potential day 2 pick. Let's have this conversation coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Texas, former Clemson safety, Andrew Mukuba, 5'11", 186 pounds, came into the combine and measuring at 30 inches even on the arm, 9 inches on the hand. He didn't do any of the jumps and 3-cone and short shuttle stuff. He did the 40. He ran a 4.45 with a 1.53 10-yard split. And Keith, we all watched tape on him. You watch him against Georgia, and you watch him just since he was at Clemson, everything. He's a versatile Swiss Army knife type of defensive back. He can play big nickel. If you go to some big nickel spots, he'll be a +1 in the run game. He's not afraid to tackle running backs in the perimeter or in space. He's not afraid to match up with big. You go back to that Florida State matchup. They put big Johnny Wilson in the slot. They put big Keon in the slot and tried to attack him on go ball situations, and he fought through the hands. He played physical with those guys. And then you see him against Georgia this year, and he's got a pick where he's playing kind of almost, it looked like almost trap coverage, where he works down into the middle of the field, like inside like the 10-yard box, and you thinking, okay, he's kind of middle of the field defender. Then he pivots back out to like a 10, 12-yard in cut and picks it off in front of the receiver, a guy he wasn't even covering. This is like that instincts, the football IQ with him. Like, well, yes, Nicky Manwari, like, yeah, he probably locked himself as a top 15 pick with the way he tested. And, of course, the way he looks. Malachi Starks should still be a first-round pick because of his game. And he didn't really test that poorly. He did, like, the 40 time 4.5, but, like, instincts, play speed over time speed is what I say. Play speed over time speed. Xavier Watts is probably the next guy up at the safety spot. And I think Andrew Mukuba is right on his heels as that's I'm gonna say X, that safety 3-4 in this pretty good safety group, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like Mukuba a lot, DP, and I think he improved so much from his time at Clemson to this year at Texas, right? And when you watch all those big time games, Mukuba kept making plays. He's a guy just always around the football, right? And so the biggest thing was just him cleaning up the tackling part, which appears that he cleaned it up a lot more this year. And when you talk about just having that versatile secondary defender, he can do a lot, DP. He can do a lot. And he can play in a lot of different schemes and situations. He's truly a guy that you can put it from free safety to strong safety to nickel to if you want him to play a little corner, depending on what the matchup is, right? I think he can do some of that also. So I look at Mukuba and top 100 prospect for me for sure. And in this safety class, DP, I'm because there's another name we have to throw in there, right? He's just kind of been out of sight, out of mind. Is Kevin Winston.
Good call.
Yep, from Penn State. I look at Mukuba, and I probably put Winston, Starks, right? I'm trying to think of the safeties. Winston and Starks, probably my 2 top safeties. And then I probably put I think Mukuba is in that bucket. And we have to talk about Nick Manwari because he's another guy that the 40 time I did not expect that. And I know the consensus and people talking and saying that he's explosive. What I'm saying is that like the film, I didn't see one of the most explosive athletes in the entire combine or in this draft class. I didn't see that part of it. So he's a guy we have to get into, but just not taking the NFL combine into conversation, I would have had Mukuba in that same bucket with Manwari, Watts, Sebastian Castro, right? Like just the second tier of safeties, that guys that can, play good football and help the team out immediately.
100%. To your point, Keith, like this year, what we saw this year from Mukuba, and I think it was kind of what Texas, the place they put him in. When you go back to when he was at Clemson, and Clemson they have a history of this with their defenders. He played everywhere, right? You talking about just from the box to free safety to slot. His last year, 2023 in Clemson, he played over 300 snaps in the slot. That was the most of his career. In 2022, it was 243 snaps in the slot, where he played less as an actual free safety. right? Then you go to this year with Texas, 508 snaps at free safety, only 71 in the slot, and he had 129 snaps as like that box defender. Like he showcases I can wear whatever hat you want me to wear as a safety. And nowadays, this is what we want from safeties, that ability to move around the line anywhere.
Yeah, DP. Remember we used to have the this or that segment, which we should bring back.
Yeah, we got to bring that.
Yeah. Does he push the narrative to have the conversation of Malachi Starks in the first round, a Mukuba in the back of the second, early third? Does he do you start to kind of wonder and have that conversation with yourself about that?
Yeah, I know I didn't think about it until you just kind of presented that. That is definitely going to be a this or that segment, because that's an interesting interesting situation to be in.
They have a lot of comparables, right? From a height weight perspective, I think like they're Starks might be a little bit heavier, like maybe 5-10 pounds heavier. But height wise, very similar. 40 time, Mukuba was faster. Production and the ability to play all over the field, they both do the same thing. So I look at it and I say that they definitely have like they're definitely going to push the narrative for some GMs to have that conversation. Like which one do we want, right?
No, 100%. I think that's going to be we're going to bring that's going to be a topic for one of the shows next week to kind of have to talk about, because like you said, too, everything else lines up. They play different, but then they play similar in certain aspects of their game. And it is a question like, okay, do I take you in round one, Malachi Starks, or do I take Andrew Mukuba in the middle of the third? And I can use my first and second pick to get what, everybody calls premium. I'm going to get this in the shot. Premium positions. Like I had to get that into my frame. Premium positions. You know how people love the positional value discussion and things of that nature. I definitely think Mukuba is going to be a day 2 pick, a top 100 pick. 100%. I agree with you on that, Keith. I think, what's crazy is for a position that's devalued, because nobody likes to talk about safeties. We might get 4 by the middle of round 3 off the board, 4 or 5 off the board. We could get 2 in round 1 with, probably potentially with Starks.
Do you think Iminwari put himself to a first round guy now?
Yeah.
So does that put the threshold that we may get 2 safeties in the first, like him and Malachi Starks? Do you think so? There's 2 safeties in the first round?
Yep. I think the 2 sweet spots to look at in the top 15, the Miami Dolphins, I think they have the 13th pick, and then the Indianapolis Colts at pick 14. The Colts have been linked to Starks, but Iminwari fits they're a big RAS score team, the way Chris Ballard drafts. Like if you got a green RAS score, you're getting your number called. The only guy I think I remember over the past couple of years that didn't have the exact measurements and RAS score was Josh Downs. And that was just because it was like, listen, we can't have all these carbon copy at receivers and expect the passing game to not look weird. Like we got to have one guy that could be shifty, quick, and win one-on-one in the hiccup. And that's what Josh Downs can bring. So they're a big RAS scorer team. I absolutely think and I think it's going to be a discussion for them. Do we take Malachi Starks or Nicky Iminwari if they're there, or do we take a Tyler Warren in the loaded tight end class, right? And we know that defensively, that's been their you want to help Anthony Richardson, and I'm all for that. Give him the easy button. But defensively, you haven't been good in the secondary. And you got a new system now with Lou Anarumo coming in, right? You kind of need to figure out, do we have his Jesse Bates? And if he's looking for the Jesse Bates, that's going to be Malachi Starks over Iminwari. So that's going to be a very interesting situation, Keith, simply because the Colts are the team that I look at that could take either one of those guys. And it's going to be like, do we get the guy that fits the system to a T, like Malachi, for our new DC, or do we go with our GM, who's probably, if this thing bottoms out this year, is probably fired after the season? So I was like, I probably think you should go with whoever fits the scheme, but we'll see how that plays out.
We will see. With DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Guys, on tomorrow's show, we're going to scout Will Johnson, the star cornerback out of Michigan. Should he be falling down the boards into the 20s of the first round for the 2025 NFL Draft? We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.